you for joining me in the practice of finding our way back to wholeness. During our audio session together, I will be talking with my village on how we are healing, changing paradigms, and degendering and decolonizing the mind. You are not alone. You are enough. Let's plant these divine seeds together. This work is for the collective from me, and there's a lot of magic that goes on behind the scenes. If you would like to make a non-cash offering to the temple that is me, please click below to visit this SSC wishlist on Amazon. Thank you and big hugs to a dear friend of mine, Riley Ann of the CatCalls, for providing the SSC intro music and some other musical goodies on the show. Learn more about her and the CatCalls on the description below. Kai-Sebastian practices authentic communication and mindfulness in day-to-day life. He holds an MA in Transformative Leadership, trainings in authentic relating, Kundalini Yoga, conscious parenting, transpersonal coaching, and certifications in integrative yoga therapy, Reiki, holistic doula, and life purpose coaching. Currently, he is engaged in an MA in Marriage and Family Therapy program with a concentration in LGBTQ, and is a conscious couples plus coach utilizing mindfulness, meditation, and authentic communication and somatic work for couples and families. Thank you so much, Kai-Sebastian, for coming, bringing your whole self to this conversation today.
Thank you. I feel really honored to be invited to be here.
Yeah, here is kind of relative right now, but it feels very accurate for the time that we're living in. Yeah, absolutely. So before we get started, I am making it an intentional practice to ask everyone their pronouns. So my name is Goddess. I go by they, them, their pronouns. How about you, Kai-Sebastian?
Yeah, I use he, him pronouns, and I'm also cool with they, them as well, but I do prefer he, him.
Okay, thank you. And also, I try to do some sort of presencing in each of the sessions. So, how are you feeling right now? What's your body feeling today? How's your heart?
Lately I've been oscillating between feeling a lot of hope and motivation and positivity, and then there'll be this wave of tenderness and sadness and grief and sometimes fear. And so I'm feeling kind of a little bit tender and also a little bit nervous of just knowing that this is something that people will hear, just not being used to very often speaking, but also feeling really called to speak and to be vocal about really important topics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I relate to that feeling a lot today too. My body's kind of sore and my heart's pretty tender. And every time I step into these podcasts or like in spaces where I know I'll be speaking and people will be listening. I get extremely nervous, and I always have this feeling of, do I even believe what I'm saying, or do I? And I have this knowing, but it just takes. It's a practice to feel as if my knowing is something that I can contribute to the collective. And so I resonate with that a lot right now in this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So, being a parent has a lot of, I would say, challenges, but also a lot of wonderful, beautiful moments. And those things aren't separate from each other. But yeah, but when you add in the complexity of living in a gender expansive life and being your whole self into that mix in our society, I think it adds a whole another nuance to it. So that's what I wanted to capture today and share, is just the experience of people who are living in that wholeness. Yeah, so let me scooch on over to the first question. So, yeah, the first one, and this is a question that a lot of people have asked me, or I've heard being asked, is what does your daughter call you, and how did you navigate that? A lot of parents are asked, and I even ask myself, like, what do I want to be called when I become a parent?
Yeah. So I came to the discovery of my true self after I had already become a parent. And so my daughter's been with me through this transition of when I used to identify with what I was told I was, which was female. And she called me mommy, after I gave birth. And then there's this unraveling or unfolding of my truth. And so but we've over time come to now she calls me daddy and dad. And that resonates with me a lot because it feels like an aspect of myself that wasn't allowed to be seen and wasn't allowed to be acknowledged and essentially wasn't allowed to exist. Just this, and that's why I choose he, him, even though my essence, I identify as non-binary. But it's just like giving myself permission to be in my masculine and to allow that to exist. And her calling me dad and daddy just feels really affirming of this aspect of me that really wants to be seen. And it's been really healing. And she's been such an advocate. And all along the time, she's been, always on board with whatever I want, ask her to call me. And I've heard her stand up for me at times. And so there was like a interim time where I wasn't yet comfortable with being called dad because I wasn't passing as male, and I just didn't have enough confidence, and I didn't feel like safe in my environment. So I had her call me Kai for short. And but I remember this one time we were in Chick-fil-A, and she was just getting used to calling me dad. And she's like, mommy, daddy, come over here. And so everyone turned around and looked and was like, what's happening? But then, kids can still make that mistake if they're used to just being around their mom more or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I felt really embarrassed, and I was like, I'm not going to make eye contact
anymore. Yeah, you're right, because it probably felt one way to you, but to everyone else, it probably meant so many different things.
Right, yeah, they're sort of like, oh, haha, my kids made that mistake before, but I was like, oh.
Yeah, yeah.
Just like, is that outing me out right now? Especially in that sort of like, environment that may not be welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. Precarious situation, to say the least. Um, uh, the other day, I was actually, actually, it was last night, I was thinking about that very idea of, um, I, I know that like my spirit is not has no gender and it's vast, like you were saying. However, when I think about parenting, I've always thought of myself as mom for me personally, and I think that comes from a place of maybe wanting to reparent and really reparent that side of myself. Um, but it just feels right. I asked myself the other day, I was like, well, do you want to be called mom? And I'm like, yes. Do you want to be called dad? And no, I don't. What about parent? Yes. Yes, parent is fine. So, yeah, I can totally relate to that. And then to have, your daughter, I think children have an amazing way of being able to be so like flexible and up for change in ways that adults can resist a lot more. And so having her even be an advocate, how has that touched you and like landed within you?
It's just, yeah, I mean, it's been so important. And, like, I'm trying to think of the word even. It's just meant a lot to me for her, just to see her be on board with it. But I think a lot of it has to do with her age, because maybe if she were a lot older and, I had been mom to her a lot longer, she was just about to turn 4 when I started to take testosterone to transition, essentially. And yeah, and so she just was in this really kind of adaptable age. And so now that she's 7, she she gets the question a lot, like, well, where's your mom? When am I going to meet your mom? Or why is your mom not around? And so she just explains to her friends, she's like, well, my dad's my mom too. He's both. And I really like that, because and I think there have been times where I've just reminded her that, her mommy hasn't gone away, because that seemed really important at one time. She seemed like she was missing her mommy, and it's kind of like I have both aspects, both and beyond, and of mother and father, and also as a single parent, just having to be both those roles anyway. So, but it's really been, I feel really grateful in a lot of ways to be a single, like, solo parent, because I've gotten the opportunity to integrate my masculine and feminine and to be my most authentic version of myself. And I don't have to share roles with someone, who's competing with me or something like that. Like, I can be all of that with her.
Yeah, and it also, yeah, like you said, it speaks to people who are solo parents. I think even if you are cis hetero following like those quote unquote norms, you get asked like, well, don't you think your child needs this in their life? Or don't you think your child needs that in their life? And it really takes away, I think, the power and the autonomy and the actual work that solo parent is doing by saying, well, don't you feel like you're missing something in your parenting? And you're bringing your whole self, and that's all that a little person probably needs for that part of their development, is just someone to nourish that, nurture that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually want to take it back to before you gave birth. And what were some of like what were some of the the experience you had with your pregnancy that you feel like really impacted the experience for you?
I'm just getting in tune with that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing that feels strongest is being really in tune with what my body needs. And through that, I felt this deep spirituality and really got in tune with my intuition and started to learn to trust it. And in fact, that was really the first time that it felt so strong and that I could trust it. Because a lot of the decisions that I had in pregnancy and in childbirthing, there's so many choices to make. And it's like, oh, and I spent so much time reading and interviewing people to see like what they did and what kind of experiences. And I was just really already interested in child development. But what it kept coming back to was like meditating, and I did hypnobirthing, and that was extremely helpful. Just like being really in tune with like, okay, what does my body need? What does baby need? And what does my soul need? And I really think through that, like learning to trust myself with birth and the experience of having a natural home birth, it was just so empowering, and to just trust life and like how that when I surrender to this intelligence of life, that it makes things so much easier. Like, I really think that spiritual aspect and the trusting of this inner guidance is what helped unfold the realization that I had previously blinded myself from of my authentic identity. Because I, for so many years had been taught not to trust myself. But it was like when I was bringing another being into the world, I just felt such a calling to go to this other place to get the answers. Like this inner guidance. Like I feel really the spiritual connection.
Yeah. I recently took a webinar with a now pregnant mama who talks about trauma during pregnancy and how we're actually like put back into our bodies when we become pregnant. And that speaks so much to what you were saying about your intuition and really like knowing what is going on with your body and feeling it so strongly. Do you feel as if you like what you were doing up to then kind of helped you to embrace that embodiment more, or do you feel like it was kind of a process that you had to get used to while you were going through your trimesters?
Well, I had already been into yoga and meditation for a few years before that. And so, but I really had such a hyper focus on health and well-being during my pregnancy. So it was like, yeah, and I feel like I had been already preparing my body and mind for it. And then I just put all of that knowledge and practice into place when I was like during my pregnancy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Wow. I'm still taking in kind of all you were saying about the experiences you had with that. It just sounds so wonderful. And very very real. Um,
Yeah, I
and
feel really blessed too. I know that like birth stories are really, you know, a sensitive topic, or they really can be. And I feel it's sometimes almost guilty that I had such an amazing experience, but I also don't want to hide that I did, you know, because I think it needs to be heard, because there's a lot of fear around giving birth, and I just, yeah, like that experience of just trust and faith was so powerful, and I keep going back to that for right now as like in my toolbox of like, okay, I know if I can just keep having trust and faith, like of the unfolding of things, that I'm going to be fine, and that we are going to be all right.
What words would you pass on to folks who haven't had meditation or yoga or any of the other teachings that you mentioned in their practice prior to becoming pregnant?
Well, I mean, it's never too late to start meditation, and I think that meditation can be. I mean, it's so transformational, and it can be really, it's seemingly daunting, but it can be really simple as well. It's just a sitting, like an intention, just like I'm intending to meditate right now, and sitting with that intention is meditation. It's like whatever you're calling it. It could just be a walk, and like I'm gonna walk and meditate, and just like continually holding the intention and coming back to that intention of I'm meditating is so powerful, and it's almost like so simple it doesn't even make sense. It's just like, how could something so simple be transformational, and like, why is it? And I still don't really fully understand those whys, and there might be some scientific research about that, but it's like, it's just coming back to stillness and like having the quiet to allow the inner guidance within all of us to come out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're kind of trained to not be in stillness. You know, we're always trying to get to the next point and worried about this or that. And so practicing stillness isn't always a regular practice for everyone, but it is so simple, and it's sad that that has been kind of trained out of what we teach and pass on to, you know, our children, because then when we grow up we don't have that the capacity for that sometimes, and so to relearn that, it can be an adjustment. I still get ants in my pants sometimes when I do my meditations, and that's okay because that's a part of the meditation. Absolutely. So
yeah, I started with a lot of guided meditations, which just at least gets your body to a place of relaxation, because that's where the healing can start, or you know, where it happens, and just like it's almost like reminding your body of how to be still. So with guided meditations, just like listening, and it'll guide you through like how to relax your body, and coming to that space of like, oh, I'm actually okay just resting. Like I'm safe here. Yeah. You know, it can feel good.
Yeah, I agree. When I first started practicing yoga on a regular basis and doing meditation, My teacher recommended we do like body scans, like listen to a guided body scan, and that was
Yeah.
super helpful. Super helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I listened to like during my pregnancy, I listened to hypno babies, and it's kind of like they're like guided meditations or visualizations about visualizing the birth that you want. And I really think that that's what made the difference in my pregnancy, because I listened to it every night and would fall asleep listening to it, and just even hearing it in my sleep as it would play, I think made such a difference in my like in my subconscious mind and what I thought was possible for birth. Because previously I had been pretty terrified, especially about a home birth. Like before I got pregnant, I didn't even consider that until I started to interview some friends who had given birth, and was like, okay, maybe this is something I could do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of like people that you reached out to during your pregnancy, did you ever experience any micro or macroaggressions when talking to your doctors or support team? And how did you navigate them?
Yeah, I think I quickly sort of rule out things that aren't in immediate resonance with me. So if it's, so I went to see an OB while I was still deciding whether, you know, what I wanted to do. And I was just like, this is, after one visit, I was just like, no, this is not it. Like just like checking in with, how's my body responding to this? Do I feel safe? Do I feel heard? And so instead of like trying to work with it, because that feels a lot like settling. And so if there is an option to work with someone, like don't settle until you find there's resonance and you feel loved and held, or whatever the feelings that you're needing right now, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know that you could even interview doctors, therapists before like agreeing to make them your doctor until a couple of years ago, and it's called a consultation. I used to think consultations were more about them trying to gauge if they wanted me for some reason. So,
That's such a good point to bring up.
Yeah, absolutely. We have the right to interview the people that we're entrusting with our lives. Yeah, is there anything you change about how or things you'd say, hey, this might happen for people who are expecting?
Well, I don't know. Well, something that's coming to me to mention is that I had a birth partner, and that made such a difference too. And we went to classes together. My birth partner was my mom, not my child's biological dad. And it just felt so beautiful that my mom was committed to going with me, for one, and she just, you know, like knew what to do because she had taken care of me in so many capacities before. And so when I was actually giving birth, and there was just this instinct, but, you know, also she wasn't scared about it because she went through the birthing classes with me. So I did the Bradley method birthing classes at the time. I don't know if that even answers your question, but that felt important to mention, is just like having, like identifying someone that you feel safe with, and, you know, asking them to go to be a part of it with you. Like, will you be on this journey with me?
Yeah.
Makes a big difference. So if I didn't have my mom, I would have hired a doula, or, you know, found a friend who was like a doula with me to be with me.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think that completely answers the question, because that is something that I was considering too. Is if I choose to have a child on my own, who is my support, you know? And I haven't had this conversation, so I would recommend having the conversation before you um, start the conception process with the people that are going to support you in this. So I have friends that I definitely hope are there with me, you know, during this process and throughout raising my child. I should probably talk to them about that. Kind of like, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, and having one on board, who's like, maybe even regularly meeting with you and just like, um, it's like, and having conversations about how do you want to be nurtured and like, what about some different scenarios and kind of having some plans. And it's all going to unfold how it unfolds, even kind of regardless of plans, but just like talking about it just sort of like helps it not be so scary when it arises.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important to think of all the like the possibilities. It just helps with ease of mind, at least in my case. So, what are some of the terms you've heard the gender expansive community redefining or renaming that our society has created to enforce the binary in birthing and parenting? So, for instance, I've heard chest feeding instead of breastfeeding, or Momo instead of mama.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I've heard of birthing persons instead of, often it's just called women. Just like,
Yeah.
okay, not just women give birth. And yeah, I'm feeling slightly like sheepish in this moment because I still don't know that many terms, so I'm still learning in that aspect, especially since for myself, I haven't needed to do that as much, like to check into those different words.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that I want to explore more and learn about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think if anything else has come to mind or that I've seen just in like group chats or something like that.
Yeah, I feel like, especially in the group chats, and just, I think people are creating them on their own, and
yeah,
so it gives us space to get creative with how we want our experience to be described, and we're defining that on our own.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of times where I don't know, what's relevant for me or has been having a daughter as a non-binary person is I'll be like changing the forms and I'll just sort of like write in the words that I want them to use, or like crossing out mother and putting parent, and I am open to with what's the word I want to use? I guess I'm out with my daughter's teachers and people that I'm interacting with. So that it just, I guess I prefer transparency because it feels like a relief to me that it doesn't feel like I'm hiding anything or like there's not as many misunderstandings about like, okay, now where's her mom then, or something like that. And so it took a lot of courage to do that, and it felt pretty uncomfortable at times because I wasn't sure like how the teachers might respond. For the most part, they were accepting, but depending on where we've lived, because we've moved a lot, and I've had a variety of reactions. But I've always felt good about being transparent, just because it felt easier in the long run of just like, it's like I gave birth to her, but I now identify as non-binary, and I use he, him pronouns, and she calls me dad. And so, and it's also like, in my own way, kind of an activist, or just like a teaching others, teaching them, the teachers and administrative people.
Yeah, you're like lived example. I do want to speak to you and chuckle at the editing of the doctor's sheets because you get really good at it. It's like you're grading a test paper or something like, and you're using yeah, you definitely get used to doing that. And then it leads to, kind of like questions by the doctor, and you kind of get to see how familiar they are with gender expansive language. So
yeah,
it's helpful.
One time I replied to like a questionnaire, and I was like, I'm sorry, it seems that part of your questionnaire is missing or didn't upload correctly because it only says male or female options.
Like, help. Your system.
It must be a glitch because the rest of the options didn't
upload. Do you mind if we talk a little bit about how you've addressed kind of some of those challenges with teachers, and how you kind of maintain that throughout the year?
Well, just, let's see. So I have a few different, like varying, like in her most recent school, but to give context, where we are in Austin, Texas, and where it's like normal to be weird, because the motto here is keep Austin weird. And so, being different is a lot more accepted. So it was just like, okay, cool, you're non-binary, that's fine. We're trying to get more inclusive in our vocabulary, so thanks for pointing that out. Whereas in Jacksonville, Florida, where we lived before this, they were like, okay, all right. And it was more like, okay, this is, I felt more of like a token person. Like, we're going to get to know this. But I was glad that they were, wanting to get to know it and wanting to get it, like, use the terminology correct. And then before that, we were in another area of Florida, in St. Petersburg, and I guess it was kind of similar, but then there was like this, we need to have a big meeting, because what if the other kids are asking Lily or my daughter about your gender, and what if she gives responses that are not okay with other families? I was like, what?
Exactly. What?
She's like, well, we're afraid that the parents are going to be like, your student told my son that her mom used to be, or her dad used to be her mom, and what are you teaching my kid? So I was like, wow, okay. So we had considered like having me come in to sort of like give an informational session to the parents just about gender spectrum, and it just was so new. And in fact, in that same town, I used to give talks to yoga instructors to help them have their yoga classes just be more gender inclusive, and like be aware of like what kind of vocabulary there is, and just the spectrums of gender. And
yeah. Did you feel as if like that was something that you were open to, or did you feel like it was kind of put on you? Because I know a lot of the time in these situations, like people who are othered are also asked to do the labor of explaining why their otheredness is okay.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I welcome the challenge and kind of see it as part of my purpose and why I'm here, and to get me outside of my my box, essentially, just like to challenge me. But it's kind of like, oh shit, if I don't do it, who will? But yeah, I hope for a world that it's almost like I hope that I'm speaking up for a world that this isn't needed anymore.
Yeah. Creating that world of the future with your words. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So,
but it's just like noticing that there wasn't anyone else who was going to do it, It was just like, okay, well, I guess I need to. And here we go. Yeah. Ready or
not. What kind of feedback did you get, like, from the parents?
Well, for the parent session, it never actually happened. I forget why, but when I did the gender inclusivity and yoga, I got a lot of great feedback. It was really well received and appreciated, and pretty much everything that I taught was completely new to them. And in fact, even myself, I had only heard the word transgender or non-binary a few years ago. Like, I don't know why, but just like this part of me had been completely cut off, and I was blind to anything happening in the world. And it wasn't until I had a client who was transitioning and from female to male, and seeing him in that process just like really helped me see it in myself, although I didn't even realize it in that time because it was like a year or so later. But really, that was the first time I had even heard the word transgender. Mm-hmm. I grew up in Indiana, and then I moved to Florida, and so it really makes a difference on like where people are living and like what's accepted and how different varying levels of safety in being your authentic self. Mm-hmm. I mean, it felt like an act of courage, just like parking and walking to pick up my daughter from school, like walking along this busy street. And like, it felt so risky for me in some ways, just to like be a male presenting person who still has a chest, still is obviously has female anatomy. And I was just like, it still feels a little pretty uncomfortable, but I feel a lot safer here in Austin than I did in Florida.
Yeah, I resonate with that. Growing up in Iowa, I heard the word transgender. However, how it was explained was not accurate. And had a lot of negative connotations that came along with it. And the term non-binary I didn't hear until about like 3 years or like a couple years ago, like you, from like a dear friend who was slowly coming into their wholeness, and through their experience, it showed me a lot about what I was yearning for within my own. And so, it feels like the places that you're in really do have an impact on how much you're able to kind of like spread out and take up space and explore that space. Absolutely. Yeah. So, in the process of taking up space and exploring gender, did you and your daughter talk about how she wanted to identify?
Yeah, and it's something that I check in with her about frequently as well, just to make sure I'm not just making continued assumptions based on what she previously thought, just like as she gets to know herself. And, children are just constantly changing, and essentially every day they're a new version of themselves, and just that's inherent in growth. And so every, few months or so, especially after I notice like a developmental change in her, I'll just check in and be like, do you still want to use she, her pronouns? Do you, what are you identifying as now?
Yeah.
And I hope that doesn't come across as like flippant, because I really want to just respect her, and because I think sometimes a potentially cis perspective might be like, oh, they don't know what they are and they're changing their mind all the time or something like that. And I think it's more of just like a getting to know ourselves and are getting more in touch with our truth as we have more experiences and also have more vocabulary to even explain it. Sort of like this, it's almost like for me, I just had this sense when I was little that I didn't have any words for. And, I'm only just now getting something close towards it for,
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you describe this, like, wordless sense of yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. And you said wordless. I want to clarify because it sounded like wordless. I'm like, no, it was wordless.
Wordless, yeah.
Yes, wordless.
It's probably another word for wordless. Yeah, thank you.
It's very wordy. Yeah, I'm so thankful that you brought that up, because that actually was the premise of another podcast I was on when it came to D. Wade and Zaya. I always pronounce it wrong. Pardon me. But a lot of people were saying, well, she's too young to know. And it's not about fully knowing. It's about having a family and a space where you can explore that, and it's okay. Because that's what growing up is you're finding who you are and exploring that. And if it's okay to explore that in other ways, with like what you want to be when you grow up, how you like the style of clothing you want to wear, then it should absolutely be okay to explore that in your gender and your sexuality. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you put it that way, because yes, that's spot on. Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned a couple of tools that you've used, and you found really helpful throughout your parenting. But are there any other tools, maybe like from your ancestors, that you have taken with you? And are there any that you're like, I'd rather leave those behind? Those stop with me.
Well, I feel like I've had to do a lot of ancestral trauma healing. And just like a breaking of patterns from, that have been perpetuated in my family. But I do want to mention like what, some things that were really nurturing. Like I learned unconditional love from my mom. Like she just had nothing but love for me. And I just feel so grateful for that. And also just like how she took care of me when I was sad or when I was sick. And I don't know if she learned that or if that's just a part of her that it was expressed. I think it was more of like a part of her that she wanted to have, like a self-healing, like giving what she had needed. And but it's just helped me be a better parent of just like knowing how to soothe and just like be even in silence just with my daughter when she's having really big feelings. Yeah. So my mom did that really well with me. But yeah, it's been a lot of like kind of forgiving and having empathy for the cycles in my family.
Preach it.
And just like intentionally choosing a different way, and being really mindful about what other ways of being are there, and especially for me in my upbringing, like what other ways of communicating are there. And that's been an especially salient learning point, and that I hope to teach as well.
Yeah. That's beautiful to have that to carry with you into your parenting. Yeah, and to still have close to you. What other resources would you recommend, or did you really enjoy parenting?
I'm like looking at a number of books. I read a lot of books. So like even before, I've always had an interest in child development, and while I was pregnant, I read a lot of things. So like some authors maybe I could mention that really gave me, sort of started with I'm forgetting his name in this moment. His first book I read was Emotional Intelligence, and then I read some books by Alfie Kohn, like Unconditional Parenting and Punished by Rewards, and those first just started to give me a different perspective of parenting. And then I went into looking. I read a lot of books by Maria Montessori, and I trained to be a Montessori teacher for a while. And I read Rudolf Steiner and learned about Waldorf philosophy, or way of teaching, essentially way of viewing children. And like I would say the core teachings from both of those that really made a difference is viewing children as their own being, not something that you own, but they are their own, and they have their own path that is unfolding kind of regardless of you. Although I personally view it as our children choose us, and so for our good and for the not so good that we bring, just to experience that whole humanness of life. But yeah, viewing our children as like this unique individual on a path who is just as equal and valid in their needs and desires, and they just happen to be born after you. Even though they're little, it doesn't mean that they aren't just as valid. And their feelings and experiences aren't as valid as someone who's older.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They're
like I was just gonna say being present with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking of when you see a child like crying really passionately over a lost toy or something that means a lot to them, but for us as adults, sometimes it doesn't feel that same way. But those emotions are very real, and in that moment, it really does affect them. And even now, there are some things when I lose them that I get a little bit teary about and frantic. So, yeah, I'm glad that you brought out those folks, especially Montessori. I used to teach at a Montessori school, so wonderful method.
Yeah, my daughter's has experienced both Montessori and Waldorf, but we've decided on unschooling because she just wants as much freedom as possible. So she gets to choose what she does, and that's her preferred method. And so her whole life is like allowing her to follow her inner guidance and like be this self-driven person. I think we all are, and it's conditioned out of us to not trust ourselves and that we were supposed to be a certain way, when really we already have this innate knowledge that just wants to unfold and nourish in itself, just like a seed growing, and it already knows what it's going to be. It's just unfolding.
Yeah, I'm into that. Can you...
I wanted to share, before we change, if we change topics, there's one more resource. This one's newer, but it's definitely something that I'm using now, and I probably wish I had before. I'm a huge fan of Dr. Shefali. That's her first name, but she goes by Shefali, and I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, like Sabari, Shefali is her first name, Shefali, and then her last name is Tsabary. She wrote The Conscious Parent and The Awakened Family, and she has just such a way of articulating some of the concepts that I've mentioned that I haven't articulated as well as she does. But it's essentially parents healing themselves too, in order to be the best parent they can for their children.
Yeah, absolutely. That reparenting through parenting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
absolutely. So, as you grow as a parent, what lessons do you carry with you into your work with Quantum Kai? Kind of switching gears.
I notice for some reason I feel more nervous in this moment. And I'm I'm not sure if I'm fully understanding the question.
Oh,
and then I feel nervous about that. I feel embarrassed about not understanding the question.
Well, I'm glad you named it. Would you like me to rephrase it or repeat it?
Yeah, rephrase it, I think.
Okay. So, as you understand more and gain more information through parenting and through all of the studying that you're doing, how do you bring that knowledge into Quantum Kai and showing up for your clients?
Yeah, because it's even though I've done a lot of this journey for myself, when I'm working with clients, I really tune into what they need, and I have a intuitive ability as well. So I tune into their space of what wants to emerge in their family's lives, and so I have this ability to tune in even to spirits of babies that are not yet born. And so I can, when I'm working with clients who are trying to conceive or just preparing to be parents, I'm tuning into that space of what wants to emerge. And we just work on what comes up for them. So I'll get, what will come through me is guidance of what needs to be healed before this baby comes in, or what sort of changes in their lives wants to be made before they have the baby, or just to best prepare. And then for people who already have children, I can tune in. I feel this is still challenging for me to speak, because sometimes it's taboo, to talk about my intuitive abilities, and so I'm facing a fear right now. I'm just speaking about it, and which is also why I haven't marketed myself as much, because I'm I don't know how people are going to receive this. But essentially, I tune into the child's soul and spirit, and what do they want communicated that either they don't have the words for yet, and that wants, what are the changes that they're needing to see. And so yeah, essentially my clients are people who that resonates with, and that I don't have to convince that it works or that it's valid. So it's been all word of mouth so far. I imagine as I gain confidence, then I'll feel better about marketing myself. Just like, not that I don't have I have confidence in my abilities. It's just more like confidence in how people will receive it, or confidence in that the world's ready to hear it.
Right. Relate to it so hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the first time I'm hearing about this gift that you have and that you want to share with folks. Can you speak more about maybe what it feels like for me when I pick up on different energy? It's usually in like colors. Sometimes it'll come in like different ways. Like how does it feel for you, and what has been, I don't know, some ways of communicating that to parents and involving the child?
Yeah, for me, it's just kind of like these things that drop in. They're very similar to thoughts, and so it's taken a while to just be like, what's just my brain and what's just the intuition, you know? And so it's pretty subtle. So I need to have a practice, need to be maintaining a practice of meditation in order for that to be clear. But it drops in as sometimes there's visions as well. Like I'll get a scene, or I'll receive it as metaphors by something that happens during a session, or something that they tell me about. So I think that's a way that sort of the unseen world, or our soul, or the universe, however you want to describe it, can communicate with us, is through metaphors of what's happening. I feel like there's actually constant communication going on, and it's just about what we're noticing.
Absolutely.
And I notice for myself, I feel the strongest connection with, like if a child is, like the younger the child or the spirit of the baby, but also with people who are older or who have passed. So just sort of that realm that's like really close to ours. That's the realm I'm really in tune with the most.
Wow.
I'm not sure if I made sense with that one.
No, you did. I'm just like picturing that experience like in my own head.
I've only recently discovered, or really allowed myself to explore, the realm of people who have passed, and it really has been cultivated after experiencing the loss of my dad, and over the past few years, like talking to him, and then realizing that I can also bring in other people who have passed, and I'm still like such a beginner in that space, though, but because it's kind of scary to me in some ways, because I don't know what I don't know, but it feels a lot easier to talk to spirits of babies, because that just feels like so innocent. But the thing is, what I'm learning is like, it's the same space. And there's nothing really to be afraid of.
I feel like I could talk for a whole nother hour about all of this. But we'll save it for like part 2.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all of this information and all of your truths. Since we've met, I've really appreciated how you comfortably, or sometimes uncomfortably, like name how you're feeling in the moment. It's a practice that I've tried to maintain since hearing it come from you. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
As well.
It's I do it. Well, it's just become part of the way I speak. But I started to do that intentionally, but it actually helps me feel. It helps release the things when I name it. So then I can just like, okay, this is out in the open, and now I can just move through it. and it doesn't hold me back anymore. So that's the power in naming what's alive for you in the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel that too. Is there anything else you'd like for folks to know about you or Quantum Kai or some of the other work that you have going on? And
These
marketing
are always
go.
the toughest questions for me because I'm like, oh, am I going to talk about myself?
There will also be links so people can explore on their own too, if that puts off some of the pressure.
Yeah, I guess I would say if what I speak about, what I've spoken about resonates or you feel curiosity, I am so welcoming of just questions. And, if you do want to work with me, I'm really flexible on pay and things like that. Just like, I just really want to be of service right now, and I feel really called to do that. So it would be a gift to me if people did reach out for help, because I feel like I have a lot to give, and I've just been really shy about sharing that. But I feel ready now. I just really want to be of service.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you do remote work? Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've been doing that for a couple of years, and it works really well. It's kind of amazing how because I don't have to be in person to tune in to the space. It's great if in-person works, but right now it's not even allowed.
Yeah, good point.
In our pandemic area. But yeah, I do Zoom or Facebook Messenger, chats, whatever is the client wants.
Okay, lovely. Well, thank you so much, Kai-Sebastian, for sharing space with us, and I cannot wait to watch and hear Quantum Kai unfold.
Thank you, Goddess. I'm so excited about what you're doing and feeling so much gratitude for what you're creating, and thank you.
Please like, share, and subscribe to the Sunseed community on Facebook and SoundCloud. Also, get more goodies at sunseedcommunity.com.